The moment Nathan Cole saw his neighbor standing alone on the beach in that red bikini, he knew she was testing the world, daring it to judge her, desire her, or look away. But when Elena Moore caught him staring, she didn't get what she expected. No shame, no hunger, just a man who'd buried his wife 6 months ago, who understood loneliness better than lust. "You done staring?" she called out, her voice sharp as broken glass. Nathan met her eyes and said the one thing no man had ever told her. "I wasn't looking at your body. I was wondering why you're standing there like you're trying to disappear." That's when everything changed. If you want to see how a broken single dad and a woman built from scars find their way to something real, stay until the end. Drop a like and comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The ocean didn't care about grief. Nathan Cole had learned that the hard way over the past 6 months, watching the Atlantic roll in and out with the same indifferent rhythm, whether Sarah was alive or buried in Pennsylvania soil. The waves didn't pause for widowers. They didn't slow down for single fathers trying to figure out how to breathe without their other half. He stood on the deck of his rental house, coffee growing cold in his hands, watching the pre-dawn light turn the water from black to gray to something almost beautiful. The beach town was supposed to be a fresh start, or at least a different kind of emptiness than the one that waited in their old house, where Lily's toys still scattered across the living room floor and Sarah's coffee mug still sat in the cabinet, third from the left, exactly where she'd always kept it. Lily was with Sarah's sister now, back in Pittsburgh, enrolled in first grade and living something close to normal. Nathan had tried, he'd tried to keep her with him those first few months. But a man who couldn't remember to eat breakfast, who woke up at 3 a.m. expecting to find his wife beside him, only to meet empty sheets, wasn't fit to raise a 6-year-old daughter who kept asking when mommy was coming home. So he'd made the hardest decision of his life and let Lily go where she could have stability, routine, a mother figure who didn't cry in the shower. He'd see her during holidays and summer break. He'd call every Sunday. He'd be the father she deserved once he figured out how to be Nathan Cole again instead of just Sarah's ghost. The beach house was small, 2 bedrooms, weathered gray shingles, a deck that faced the ocean like a sentinel. The landlord had been apologetic about the neighbor's situation. "The woman next door," he'd said, clearing his throat. She keeps to herself mostly. Doesn't cause trouble, but she's got her ways. Just wanted to give you a heads up." Nathan hadn't cared then. He barely cared now. All he wanted was silence and space to figure out what came next. What he got instead was Elena Moore. Butch. He first saw her 3 days after moving in, when he was hauling boxes from his truck in the early morning cool. She emerged from the house next door, a cottage painted pale yellow with white shutters, flowers blooming in boxes beneath the windows like someone actually gave a damn about making things pretty. She was barefoot, wearing cut-off denim shorts and a tank top that had seen better days, her dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She moved with a kind of casual grace, carrying a beach bag over one shoulder and a towel under her arm. She didn't glance his way, didn't acknowledge his existence at all. Nathan watched her descend the steps to the sand, plant herself about 30 yards from her back deck, and spread out her towel with practiced efficiency. Then she stripped off the shorts and tank top, revealing a red bikini that would have stopped traffic on a busier beach. And she just stood there, not sunbathing, not swimming, just standing at the edge of the water, arms loose at her sides, staring at the horizon like she was waiting for it to answer a question she hadn't asked out loud. Nathan told himself to look away, told himself it was none of his business, told himself that a widow with a daughter and enough grief to sink a battleship had no right to notice the way the morning light caught in a stranger's hair or the particular defiance in the set of her shoulders. But he looked anyway, because beneath the obvious beauty was something else, something rawer, loneliness, the kind that wore confidence like armor. She must have felt his eyes because she turned, pinning him with a stare that could have cut glass. Even from that distance, Nathan could see the challenge in her posture, the way she lifted her chin like she was daring him to be exactly what she expected. He should have gone inside, should have given her privacy, should have been the respectful neighbor who understood boundaries. Instead, he stayed exactly where he was. She walked toward him, unhurried, her feet making soft prints in the sand. Up close, she was younger than he'd first thought, maybe early 30s, with dark eyes that had seen too much and a mouth set in a line that suggested she didn't suffer fools. "You done staring?" Her voice had a rasp to it, like whiskey over gravel. "Wasn't staring," Nathan said quietly. "Not the way you think." Her laugh was sharp, humorless. "Right. Let me guess. You're different from all the other guys, is that it? You were admiring my aura or some bullshit like that?" Nathan met her eyes without flinching. "I was wondering why you're standing there like you're trying to disappear." The words landed between them like stones. Her expression flickered, just for a second, and Nathan saw the crack in her armor. Surprise. Maybe recognition. The look of someone who'd just been seen when they thought they were invisible. Then the armor slammed back into place. "That's a new line," she said, her voice flat. "Points for originality." "It's not a line." "Sure it's not." She crossed her arms, the motion defensive despite the bikini. "Look, I don't know what you're looking for, but I'm not interested. So you can take your sad widower routine back to whatever midlife crisis brought you here, and we can both pretend we're not neighbors. Deal?" Nathan blinked. "How did you—" "The ring tan on your finger, the way you're living out of boxes 3 days after moving in, the fact that you look like you haven't slept in 6 months. She shrugged. "I'm observant, and I've seen enough broken people to recognize the signs." He should have been angry, should have told her to mind her own business, should have walked away from this conversation before it went anywhere he wasn't ready to go. Instead, he said, "Fair enough, but I'm not running a routine. I'm just trying to get through the day without falling apart. Same as you." Her eyes narrowed. "You don't know anything about me." "No," Nathan agreed, "but I know that look. The one that says you're standing on a beach at dawn in a red bikini, daring the world to either desire you or judge you, because either way it means you still exist." He paused. "I had that look for a while. Different version, same feeling." Silence stretched between them, filled only by the sound of waves and the cry of gulls wheeling overhead. "You should go inside," Elena said finally, her voice stripped of its earlier sharpness, "before you say something else that makes me think you're actually human." Nathan picked up the box he'd abandoned. "For what it's worth, I'm not here to bother you. I'm just here to breathe." "Yeah, well." She turned back toward the water, her shoulders tense. Breathing's overrated anyway. He left her there, standing at the edge of the ocean, and carried his boxes inside. But he didn't forget the look in her eyes when he'd named her loneliness out loud. Didn't forget the way her voice had softened, just for a moment, before she remembered to be hard again. And he definitely didn't forget the red bikini. But 3 days passed before he saw her again. 3 days of unpacking boxes, of setting up a bedroom he'd sleep in alone, of staring at his phone and willing himself to call Lily, even though hearing her voice always made the ache in his chest worse. He was on his deck, attempting to read a book he'd bought at the airport, some thriller about a man running from his past, which felt a little too on the nose, when he heard the sound of a child's laughter. A little girl came running around the side of Elena's house, all wild curls and bright energy, chasing a beach ball that was almost as big as she was. She couldn't have been more than 6, Lily's age, and she moved with that fearless abandon that kids have before the world teaches them caution. Elena followed at a distance, her expression softer than Nathan had seen it, though still guarded. She wore jeans and a loose white shirt, her hair down around her shoulders. She looked almost peaceful, watching her daughter play. The ball escaped the little girl's grasp and bounced straight toward Nathan's deck. The child froze, looking up at him with wide, uncertain eyes. "It's okay," Nathan said, climbing down the steps to retrieve the ball. "Here you go." He held it out, expecting the girl to grab it and run. Instead, she studied him with a seriousness that seemed too old for her face. "Are you sad?" she asked. Nathan crouched down to her level, the ball between them. "Yeah, sweetheart. I am. How'd you know?" "You have the same eyes as Mama when she thinks I'm not looking." The honesty of it hit Nathan square in the chest. He glanced up to find Elena watching them, her posture tense, ready to intervene if needed. "Well," Nathan said carefully, "sometimes grown-ups get sad, but we're working on getting better. What's your name?" "Mia." She accepted the ball, hugging it to her chest. Mama says I'm not supposed to talk to strangers. Your mama's right. That's a good rule. But you don't feel like a stranger, Mia said matter-of-factly. You feel like someone who understands. Before Nathan could respond, Elena called out, Mia, come here, baby. The little girl obeyed immediately, running back to her mother with the ball bouncing beside her. Elena picked her up, settling her on her hip, and met Nathan's eyes over the distance. Thank you, she said, the words careful, measured. Nathan nodded. Any time. He watched them go back inside, Mia chattering about something he couldn't hear, Elena's hand gentle on her daughter's back. And he felt something shift in his chest, not the sharp pain of loss, but something softer, recognition. The understanding that whatever walls Elena Moore had built, they weren't just for show. They were protection for someone she loved more than herself. The next morning, Nathan woke early and made coffee, carrying it out to his deck the way he'd started doing since moving here. The ritual gave him something to hold on to, a reason to get out of bed even when sleep had been thin and haunted. He was halfway through his first cup when he heard the sound of hammering. Elena was on her back deck, attacking a loose step with a hammer and nails that looked older than the house. She was barefoot again, apparently her preferred state, wearing shorts and a faded blue t-shirt. Her hair was tied back and she was cursing quietly every time the hammer missed its mark. Nathan watched for a few minutes, recognizing the particular frustration of a repair job going wrong. The step was clearly rotted through in places, the wood splintering under the nails instead of accepting them. He shouldn't get involved. Shouldn't insert himself into her life when she'd made it clear she valued her privacy. But he'd been a carpenter in another life, back before business school, before Sarah, before everything changed, and he knew that step was going to collapse under someone's weight if it wasn't fixed properly. He set down his coffee and walked over. You're going about that wrong, he said from the edge of her property. Elena looked up, hammer still in hand, and he saw the flash of irritation cross her face. I don't remember asking for your opinion. You didn't, but that step's rotted through. You nail into rotten wood and you're just making kindling. He gestured toward the step. You need to replace the whole board, not just reinforce it. I don't have another board. I do. Left over from some work I did at my last place. She stood up, wiping her hands on her shorts. Why would you help me? Nathan shrugged. Because I'm awake. You're fixing a step that's going to hurt someone if it's not done right, and I know how to fix it. No hidden agenda, no strings. Just neighborly. Elena studied him for a long moment, her dark eyes searching for the lie, the angle, the thing that would make him like every other man who'd offered help only to demand payment in forms she wasn't willing to give. Fine, she said finally, but I'm watching you work, and if you try anything, I won't. Nathan's voice was calm, certain. I'll get my tools. 20 minutes later, he was on her deck, prying up the rotten step while Elena sat on the railing, watching him with arms crossed. Mia had appeared at some point, settling herself on the top step with a coloring book, humming quietly while she worked. You're good at this, Elena observed, her tone neutral. Used to do carpentry. Before. Nathan didn't elaborate, focusing on extracting the rusted nails without damaging the frame. Before what? Before I decided there was more money in finance than in building things with my hands. He glanced up. Turns out money doesn't make you happy. Who knew? Everyone knew, Elena said dryly. They just didn't believe it. Nathan smiled despite himself. Fair point. They fell into silence, broken only by the sound of Nathan's work and Mia's humming. It was comfortable in a way Nathan hadn't expected, the kind of quiet that didn't demand filling. Your daughter, Nathan said after a while, measuring the new board against the frame. She's a good kid. She's the best thing I've ever done. Elena's voice softened. Only good thing, probably. I doubt that. You don't know me. No, Nathan agreed, cutting the board to size. But I know what it takes to raise a good kid, especially alone. That doesn't happen by accident. Elena was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was careful, like she was testing words she wasn't used to saying out loud. Her father's not in the picture. Never really was, but especially not now. Nathan didn't push, just nodded and kept working, fitting the new board into place. Does your daughter live with you? Elena asked. No. The word came out rougher than he intended. She's with family right now, during the school year. I see her summers and holidays. That must be hard. Nathan drove a nail home with more force than necessary. Hardest thing I've ever done. But it was the right call. I'm not ready to be what she needs. Not yet. At least you're honest about it, Elena said quietly. Most men just pretend they're fine and fuck up their kids in the process. Is that what happened to you? Her laugh was bitter. Among other things, Nathan finished securing the board and tested it with his weight, bouncing a few times to make sure it was solid. There. Should hold for a while. You'll want to seal it against the weather, but it's safe now. Thank you. Elena slid off the railing, her bare feet making no sound on the deck. What do I owe you? Nothing. I told you, just being neighborly. She studied him again with that same searching look, like she was trying to solve a puzzle she didn't know how to approach. Nobody does something for nothing. I just did. Why? Nathan gathered his tools, considering his answer carefully. Because when my wife died, a lot of people showed up with casseroles and sympathy cards and disappeared the second things got uncomfortable. But there was this one guy, my neighbor back in Pittsburgh, who just showed up every Saturday morning and mowed my lawn. Didn't say much, didn't want anything, just mowed the lawn and left. He met Elena's eyes. Sometimes people help because it's the only way they know how to fight back against all the shit that doesn't make sense. This is me fighting back. Elena's expression shifted, something vulnerable flickering across her face before she locked it down again. Your wife. What was her name? Sarah. I'm sorry. Me too. Nathan picked up his toolbox. But I'm trying to learn how to live around it. Some days are better than others. Yeah, Elena said softly. I know that feeling. He left her there on her fixed deck, Mia still coloring, the ocean stretching out endlessly behind them. And for the first time since Sarah died, Nathan felt something other than grief settle in his chest. It felt almost like purpose. The next few weeks fell into a pattern Nathan hadn't anticipated. He'd wake early, make coffee, sit on his deck. Sometimes Elena would be on hers. They'd nod to each other, maybe exchange a few words about the weather or the tourists starting to crowd the beach as summer approached. Nothing deep, nothing that required either of them to be more than they were in that moment. But Mia was a different story. The little girl seemed to have adopted Nathan as a fixture in her world, the way kids do when they decide someone is safe. She'd wave to him from the beach, show him shells she'd found, ask him questions about the boats in the harbor. Nathan found himself looking forward to those interactions more than he wanted to admit. Mia reminded him of Lily, not in looks, but in that particular brightness kids have when they're loved well. It hurt sometimes, that reminder. But it felt good too, like remembering how to be a father even from a distance. Elena allowed it, though Nathan could see her watching, evaluating, ready to step in if he crossed a line. He respected that, understood it. A single mother protecting her daughter from men who might promise safety but deliver something else entirely. One afternoon, Nathan was on his deck reading when he heard raised voices from next door. Not quite an argument, but close. He tried not to listen, tried to give them privacy, but Elena's voice carried in the salt air. I told you, we're fine. We don't need anything. A man's voice responded, too low for Nathan to make out words, but the tone was placating in a way that set Nathan's teeth on edge. Please just go, Elena said, her voice tight. You showing up unannounced doesn't help anyone. More low murmuring than the sound of a car door closing. An engine starting, gravel crunching under tires as someone pulled away. Nathan stayed where he was, giving Elena space. Whatever that was, it wasn't his business. But 10 minutes later, Mia appeared at the edge of his deck, her eyes red like she'd been crying. Mr. Nathan? Her voice was small, uncertain. He set down his book immediately. Hey, Mia, you okay? She climbed the steps without invitation, settling herself on the deck chair next to his. Mama's sad again. Nathan's chest tightened. Sometimes grown-ups have sad days. It's because of the man who came. Mia drew her knees up to her chest. He makes Mama scared. I don't like him. Is he... Nathan chose his words carefully. Is he someone your mama knows? He says he's my daddy. Mia's voice was matter of fact, like she was reporting the weather. But I don't think he is. Daddies are supposed to make you feel safe. He makes mama shake. Nathan felt anger spark in his gut, the protective kind that came from being a father, from knowing exactly what it meant when a man made a woman shake with fear. Does he come here a lot? Nathan kept his voice gentle, calm, not wanting to scare Mia. Sometimes. Mama always tells him to go away. She looked up at Nathan with those two old eyes. Are you going to go away too? The question landed like a punch. No, sweetheart. I live right here. But you're sad like Mama. Sad people go away sometimes. Nathan crouched down to her level, his heart breaking for this little girl who'd learned too young that people leave. You're right that I'm sad. I miss my wife, and I miss my daughter. But being sad doesn't mean I'm going anywhere. I'm staying right here. Promise? He thought about all the promises he'd made and broken since Sarah died. All the times he'd sworn he'd be okay, be strong, be the father Lily deserved, only to fall apart at 3 a.m. and prove himself a liar. But this promise, to this child who needed to believe someone could stay, felt different. I promise, he said quietly. I'm not going anywhere. Mia studied him for a long moment, then nodded, satisfied. Okay, I believe you. She climbed down from the chair and headed back toward her house, leaving Nathan standing on his deck with his hands shaking slightly and his mind racing. A man who made Elena shake. A man claiming to be Mia's father, showing up unannounced and unwelcome. Nathan didn't know the full story, didn't know the history or the complications, but he knew enough to recognize danger when it circled someone vulnerable, and he'd promised Mia he wasn't going anywhere. That evening, after the sun had set and the beach had emptied of tourists, Nathan heard a knock on his door. Elena stood on his porch, her arms wrapped around herself despite the warm night air. She looked exhausted, not physically tired, but emotionally wrung out. Mia said she came over here earlier, she said without preamble. She did. What did you talk about? Nathan could have lied, could have deflected, could have protected Mia's confidence the way kids sometimes needed, but Elena deserved the truth. She told me about the man who came by, said he claimed to be her father, said he makes you scared. Nathan kept his voice neutral, non-judgmental. I didn't press her for details, just listened. Elena closed her eyes briefly, and Nathan saw the war happening behind her expression, the desire to shut down, to protect her privacy, to tell him it was none of his business fighting against something else. Exhaustion, maybe. Or the simple human need to not be alone with fear. Can I come in? She asked quietly. Nathan stepped back, holding the door open. Of course. She entered his house for the first time, taking in the sparse furniture, the boxes still unpacked in corners, the photos of Lily he'd finally managed to hang on one wall. She stopped in front of them, studying his daughter's face. She looks like you, Elena observed. She looks like Sarah. Nathan moved to the kitchen. Can I get you something? Coffee? Water? I have wine, though it's probably terrible. Water's fine. He poured 2 glasses while Elena settled on the edge of his couch, perched like she might bolt at any second. He handed her the glass and took the chair across from her, giving her space. His name is Victor, Elena said after a long silence. Victor Hale, Mia's biological father. The words came out flat, practiced, like she'd told this story before. We were together for about 3 years. He was charming at first, successful, knew how to make me feel like I was special. She laughed bitterly. Classic story, right? Girl with daddy issues falls for the first man who pays attention. Nathan said nothing, just listened. I got pregnant. He said all the right things about commitment and family. Then Mia was born, and he realized that babies are actual work, not just accessories for Christmas cards. Elena's hands tightened around her glass. He started staying late at work, started criticizing everything I did, how I fed her, how I dressed her, how I couldn't lose the baby weight fast enough. Started making me feel like I was failing at the only thing that mattered. Controlling, Nathan said quietly. Among other things. Elena took a drink of water. When Mia was 2, I finally got the courage to leave. Took her and whatever I could fit in my car and just drove. Ended up here. She gestured vaguely at the world outside. He fought for custody at first, made a lot of noise about being a father, but he didn't actually want to be a parent. He just wanted to win. When the court stuff got expensive and inconvenient, he disappeared. Until today. Until today, Elena confirmed. He shows up every few months, claims he's changed, wants to be involved in Mia's life, plays the concerned father for about 10 minutes, until I remind him that courts require things like child support and consistent visitation. Then he gets angry and leaves. Her voice dropped. But each time he comes back, I'm terrified it'll be different, that he'll have the money to actually fight me, that he'll find a way to take her. Nathan leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. Does he pay child support? No, he's supposed to, but he moves around enough that enforcement is difficult, and honestly, I'd rather have nothing from him than give him any legal foothold. Has he ever hurt you, physically? Elena met his eyes. He's never hit me, if that's what you're asking. But there are other ways to hurt someone, other ways to make them feel like they're nothing. Nathan nodded slowly, anger simmering in his gut, but his expression calm. Thank you for telling me. I don't know why I did, Elena admitted. I don't talk about this, especially not with men you barely know who fixed your step. That pulled a small smile from her. Yeah, that. For what it's worth, Nathan said carefully, I'm not going to insert myself where I'm not wanted. This is your life, your daughter, your decisions. But if you ever need someone to just be present, to be a witness, I can do that. Elena studied him for a long moment, and Nathan felt the weight of that gaze, the way she was measuring him against every man who'd promised to help and then demanded payment in ways she couldn't afford to give. Why? She asked finally. Why would you do that for someone you don't know? Nathan thought about Sarah, about the promises he'd made at her bedside, about the way grief had taught him what mattered and what was just noise. Because when my wife was dying, she made me promise something, he said quietly. She made me promise that I wouldn't let grief turn me into someone who stopped seeing people. She said the world had enough men who walked past pain without noticing. She wanted me to be the kind of man who stayed present, who helped when he could, who didn't look away just because something was hard. He met Elena's eyes. I've broken a lot of promises since Sarah died, but I'm trying real hard not to break that one. Silence stretched between them, heavy with things unsaid. I should go, Elena said finally, standing. Mia's asleep, but I don't like leaving her alone too long. Nathan walked her to the door, opening it to the sound of waves and the smell of salt air. She paused on his porch, turning back to face him. Nathan. Yeah? Thank you. For listening. For not... She trailed off, searching for words. For not making me feel crazy. You're not crazy, Nathan said firmly. You're careful. There's a difference. She studied him one more time, then nodded and disappeared into the darkness between their houses. Nathan stood on his porch long after she'd gone, staring at the ocean and thinking about promises and proximity and the particular weight of trying to protect people who'd learned the hard way that protection often came with conditions. Somewhere in Elena's house, Mia was sleeping, dreaming whatever dreams 6-year-olds had. And somewhere out in the world, Victor Hale was planning his next move, the way men like that always did. Nathan had promised Mia he wasn't going anywhere. He'd promised Sarah he wouldn't look away from pain. And now, standing in the darkness with the ocean roaring its indifference, he made a new promise to himself. If Victor Hale came back, if Elena needed someone to stand between her daughter and a man who treated family like a possession to win, Nathan would be there. Not as a rescuer, not as a replacement father or a white knight, just as a man who understood what it meant to stay when staying was hard. Because that was the only promise that mattered anymore. The morning after Elena's confession arrived with fog so thick, Nathan could barely see the ocean from his deck. He sat with his coffee anyway, the dampness settling into his bones while he thought about Victor Hale and the particular kind of man who used fatherhood as a weapon. He'd known men like that, worked with them in finance, watched them treat their families like portfolio investments, something to manage and control rather than love. They measured worth in outcomes they could display, not in the quiet work of showing up day after day. Nathan's phone buzzed. A text from Lily. Aunt Marie says I can get a goldfish. Can I name it Sparkles? He smiled despite the ache in his chest. You can name it whatever you want, sweetheart. Send me a picture when you get it. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, I miss you, Daddy. Nathan's throat tightened. He typed and deleted 3 different responses before settling on the truth. I miss you too, Lil. Every single day. I'll call you tonight, okay? Okay. Love you. Love you more than all the stars. It was their thing, the phrase Sarah had started when Lily was a baby. Nathan had kept it going because some promises you kept, even when the person who made them was gone. He was still staring at his phone when he heard Mia's voice floating through the fog, high and excited about something. Then Elena's laugh, genuine, unguarded, and Nathan felt something warm unfold in his chest. The fog began to lift as the sun climbed higher, burning off in patches until he could see Elena's deck. Mia was there in her pajamas, dancing to music Nathan couldn't hear, while Elena watched from the railing with that soft expression mothers get when their children are simply being children. Elena caught Nathan looking and gave him a small wave, not defensive this time, just acknowledging his presence. Progress, Nathan thought. Small, fragile, but real. 2 days later, Nathan was at the hardware store picking up supplies to build a raised garden bed, something to occupy his hands while his mind worked through the harder stuff, when he heard a familiar voice in the next aisle. No, baby, we can't get the purple paint. We're just here for light bulbs. But Mama, purple is the best color. Everyone knows that. Nathan smiled and rounded the corner to find Elena crouched down at Mia's level, holding a shopping basket in one hand while Mia clutched a paint can in both arms like it was treasure. Hey, Nathan said. Elena looked up and something crossed her face. Surprise, maybe relief. Hey, didn't expect to see you here. Yeah, well, turns out beach houses require maintenance. He nodded at Mia. Purple, huh? Good choice. Mia's face lit up. Mr. Nathan, tell Mama that purple is the best color. I don't know about the best, Nathan said seriously, crouching down to her level. But it's definitely in the top 3. What do you want to paint? My room. It's white and boring, and I want it to be purple, like a princess castle. Nathan glanced at Elena, who was shaking her head. We're renting. Can't paint the walls. What about furniture? Nathan suggested. You could paint a dresser or a bookshelf, something that's yours to take with you if you move. Mia gasped like he'd just solved world hunger. Mama, can we? Please. Elena sighed, but Nathan could see her softening. We don't have any furniture to paint. I saw a small bookshelf at the thrift store down on Harbor Street yesterday, Nathan said. Maybe $20, if you wanted to check it out. Please, Mama? Mia's eyes were enormous, pleading. Elena looked between her daughter and Nathan, and he could see her weighing it, the cost, the mess, the fact that accepting his suggestion meant accepting his continued presence in their lives. Fine, she said finally, but Mr. Nathan has his own shopping to do. We can't— I'm done, Nathan interrupted. And I know how to paint furniture without making a disaster. If you want help, I mean. No pressure. Elena studied him for a long moment. You're very persistent about inserting yourself into our lives. I'm persistent about being helpful when I can be, Nathan corrected gently. There's a difference, but if you'd rather handle it yourself, I respect that. Mia tugged on her mother's hand. I like Mr. Nathan, Mama. He's nice. Something in Elena's expression cracked, just slightly, just enough for Nathan to see the woman beneath the armor, the one who was tired of doing everything alone but terrified of trusting anyone to help. Okay, she said quietly. The thrift store. But if that bookshelf is ugly, we're not getting it. Mia cheered and threw her arms around Nathan's legs in an impulsive hug that nearly knocked him over. He steadied himself, his hand automatically coming to rest on the top of her head, and felt the now familiar ache of missing Lily mixed with something new, the simple pleasure of making a child happy. Thank you, Mr. Nathan. Mia released him and grabbed her mother's hand. Come on, Mama, we have to go see it. Elena let herself be pulled toward the checkout, glancing back at Nathan with an expression he couldn't quite read. "You coming?" He picked up his basket. "Yeah, I'm coming." The bookshelf was perfect, small enough for a child's room, solid wood beneath the scratched finish, with 3 shelves and decorative trim that would look great painted. Mia bounced on her toes while Elena examined it for stability. "It's good quality," Nathan said, running his hand along the joints. "They don't make them like this anymore. Some sanding, some paint, and it'll look brand new." $22, the store clerk called out. "Cash only." Elena pulled out her wallet, but Nathan was already handing over the bills. "Consider it a housewarming gift, neighbor to neighbor." "Nathan, you can't." "Already done." He picked up the bookshelf, testing its weight. "I can carry this to your place. Where are you parked?" Elena looked like she wanted to argue, but Mia was already skipping toward the door, chattering about what books she'd put on her new purple bookshelf, and the moment for protest passed. They loaded it into Nathan's truck. Elena's car was too small, and drove the 3 blocks back to their houses in comfortable silence. Mia sat in the back seat, narrating a complex story about a purple castle and a dragon who was actually nice once you got to know him. Nathan carried the bookshelf to Elena's back deck while she unlocked the door. The inside of her house was nothing like he'd imagined. Warm, lived in, with photographs on every surface and Mia's artwork covering the refrigerator. It smelled like coffee and cinnamon, and there was a stack of library books on the coffee table next to a mug that said Mom Fuel. "You can put it here," Elena said, gesturing to a corner of the deck. "We'll work on it outside, less mess." "Smart." Nathan set it down carefully. "You need sandpaper, primer, and good outdoor paint for furniture. The purple Mia picked is fine, but you'll want a primer first or it'll take forever to cover." "I don't know how to do any of this," Elena admitted. "I do. If you want to make this a weekend project, I can show you. Mia can help with the easy parts." Elena crossed her arms, her default defensive posture, but her voice was softer than usual. "Why are you doing this?" "Doing what?" "Being nice. Helping. Buying furniture for a kid you barely know." Nathan leaned against the deck railing, choosing his words carefully. "When Lily was 4, Sarah got really sick for the first time. Just for a few weeks, turned out to be pneumonia, but we didn't know that at first. I was terrified, working full-time, trying to take care of a 4-year-old while my wife was in the hospital." He paused, remembering those awful days. "Our neighbor, Mrs. Chen, showed up one day with groceries and a slow cooker full of soup. She didn't ask if we needed help. She just helped. And when I tried to pay her back, she said something I've never forgotten." "What?" "She said, 'You can't pay back kindness. You can only pay it forward.'" Nathan met Elena's eyes. "Sarah died owing kindness to a lot of people. I figure the least I can do is try to balance that debt." Elena was quiet for a long time, her arms still crossed, but her posture less rigid. "That's a good answer. It's the truth." "I'm not used to truth," she said quietly. "Men usually lie to get what they want." "I'm not looking for anything except maybe to feel like a useful human being for a few hours." Nathan pushed off the railing. "But if that makes you uncomfortable, I'll back off. I'm not trying to pressure you into anything." Mia appeared in the doorway, her arms full of stuffed animals. "Mama, can my animals watch while we paint?" Elena's expression softened immediately. "Sure, baby. Go set them up." Mia arranged her audience with great care, while Nathan and Elena stood in awkward silence. Finally, Elena sighed. "Saturday morning," she said. "If you're serious about helping, come over around 9. I'll have coffee." Nathan smiled. "I'll bring donuts." Mia doesn't need that much sugar. "Fine. I'll bring fruit and granola or whatever responsible parents feed their kids." "Donuts are fine," Elena said, the corner of her mouth twitching. "Just this once." Saturday arrived with clear skies and a warm breeze that promised summer was coming. Nathan showed up at 8:55 with a box of donuts, sandpaper in 3 different grits, primer, and the purple paint Mia had picked out. Elena answered the door in cut-off shorts and an old t-shirt with paint stains already on it, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. She looked younger like this, less guarded. "You're early," she said. "I'm 5 minutes early. That's called punctual." Most men I know consider on time to mean showing up an hour late with excuses. Nathan held up the donut box. Most men you know sound like assholes. Elena laughed, a real laugh that lit up her whole face, and took the box. Come on, Mia's been awake since 6, asking every 10 minutes if you're here yet. Mia indeed came running when she heard Nathan's voice, nearly tackling him with enthusiasm. Mr. Nathan, you came! Did you bring the paint? Can we start now? Let the man breathe, baby, Elena said, but she was smiling. They set up on the back deck, spreading out newspapers and arranging supplies. Nathan showed Mia how to sand with the grain, his hand covering hers to guide the motion. Elena watched from the deck chair, coffee in hand, her expression unreadable. Like this? Mia asked, her tongue poking out in concentration. Perfect. You're a natural. Nathan ruffled her hair. Keep going just like that. They worked in comfortable rhythm, Nathan explaining each step while Mia peppered him with questions. Why did they have to sand? Why was primer white? How long until it dried? Nathan answered each one patiently, and Elena found herself relaxing, watching this strange man teach her daughter with the ease of someone who'd done this before. You're good with kids, she observed during a break while Mia ran inside for more juice. Nathan shrugged. I had practice. Lily and I used to build stuff together. Nothing fancy, birdhouses, a planter box for Sarah's herbs, but she loved it. Do you talk to her often? Every Sunday. Sometimes during the week if something happens she wants to tell me about. His voice went quiet. It's hard being away from her, but she's doing better with my sister-in-law, stable, happy. That matters more than my feelings. That's very selfless. It's very necessary, Nathan corrected. I was a mess after Sarah died. Still am, some days. Lily deserves better than a father who can't get out of bed. Elena studied him. But you get out of bed now. Most days. He met her eyes. Having something to do helps. Someone to show up for, even if it's just a neighbor's kid who wants a purple bookshelf. Mia returned before Elena could respond, and they dove back into work. The sanding took longer than expected. Mia was thorough, insisting every rough spot be perfectly smooth, but finally they had a clean surface ready for primer. Now we have to wait for it to dry, Nathan explained, applying the primer with long, even strokes while Mia watched. Usually a couple hours, but then we can do the purple. Can we have lunch while we wait? Mia asked. I'm starving, Elena laughed. You had 3 donuts 2 hours ago. That was breakfast. Lunch is different. I could go grab sandwiches from that deli on Main Street, Nathan offered. If that's okay? Elena hesitated, and Nathan could see the internal war playing out. Accepting help meant opening herself up to expectation, to the possibility of owing something she couldn't afford to give. Just sandwiches, Nathan said quietly. Not a marriage proposal. That pulled a reluctant smile. Turkey on wheat for me, peanut butter and jelly for Mia, but make sure they cut off the crusts or she'll pick at it for an hour. No crusts. Got it. Nathan stood, brushing primer dust off his hands. Be back in 20. He drove to the deli thinking about Elena's hesitation, about the way she measured every interaction like it might be a trap. Victor Hale had done a number on her, teaching her that kindness came with conditions and help was just another form of control. Nathan understood that. After Sarah died, people had shown up with their sympathy and their casseroles, but half of them disappeared when he didn't perform grief the way they expected, when he didn't get better on their timeline, when his sadness made them uncomfortable. They'd backed away with polite excuses and promises to check in that they never kept. He'd learned to recognize real help from performance. Elena was still learning. The deli was packed with Saturday lunch crowd, but Nathan waited patiently, thinking about Mia's laugh and Elena's guarded smiles and the way it felt to be useful again, to be more than just a widower marking time. When he got back, he found Elena and Mia on the beach, building an elaborate sandcastle, complete with a moat. Mia's hair was full of sand, and Elena's shorts were soaked from where she'd knelt too close to the water's edge. Lunch delivery, Nathan called out, holding up the bag. They ate on the deck, Mia chattering between bites about the castle they'd built, and how the ocean kept trying to steal it. Elena was quieter, but Nathan caught her watching him several times, her expression thoughtful. What? He asked finally. Nothing, just... She trailed off, searching for words. Mia really likes you. I like her too. She's a great kid. She doesn't usually warm up to people this fast, especially men. Elena's voice was careful. Victor messed her up a little, made her wary. Kids have good instincts, Nathan said. She knows who's safe and who's not. Do they, though? Because I didn't. I thought Victor was safe right up until he wasn't. Nathan set down his sandwich. You were in love. Love makes people optimistic, hopeful. That's not a character flaw. That's being human. It's being stupid. No, Nathan said firmly. It's being brave enough to trust someone. The fact that he violated that trust says everything about him and nothing about you. Elena's eyes went bright with unexpected tears. She blinked them back quickly, looking away toward the ocean. You don't know me well enough to say that. I know enough. I know you left when you realized it was wrong. I know you're raising a happy, confident kid alone. I know you're careful about who you let in because you're protecting someone you love more than yourself. He paused. That's not stupidity. That's strength. She was quiet for a long moment, her fingers twisting the napkin in her lap. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. He used to tell me I was broken, that I was lucky he put up with me because no one else would want someone so damaged. Rage flared in Nathan's chest, hot and immediate, but he kept his voice calm. He was lying. And he was lying because breaking you down made him feel powerful. Men like that, they need to make women feel small because that's the only way they can feel big. How do you know so much about this? Because I watched my mother stay with a man who did the same thing to her for 50 years, Nathan said quietly. My father wasn't violent, but he was cruel in every other way that mattered. Told her she was worthless, that she couldn't make it without him, that her dreams were stupid. By the time she finally left, she believed him. He met Elena's eyes. It took her years to remember who she was before him, but she did it. And you did it. That takes more courage than most people will ever need. Elena wiped at her eyes quickly, her voice rough. I don't feel very courageous. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing the hard thing even when you're terrified. Nathan gestured toward Mia, who was now trying to teach her stuffed animals to dance. You're doing it every day. They sat in silence, watching Mia perform for an audience of plush toys, the ocean rolling endlessly behind them. Finally, Elena spoke again. Thank you for saying that, for... She trailed off, struggling. For seeing me. You're not hard to see, Nathan said simply. You're right there. The primer dried by mid-afternoon and Mia bounced with excitement as Nathan helped her paint the first coat of purple. Elena supervised, offering suggestions and laughing when Mia got more paint on herself than the bookshelf. We're going to need a second coat, Nathan said, stepping back to assess their work. Maybe a third, but it's looking good. It's looking purple, Elena said dryly. It's looking beautiful. Mia spun in a circle, her purple-stained hands held out like she was conducting an orchestra. It's perfect. Mr. Nathan, can we do my dresser next? One piece of furniture at a time, baby, Elena said, but she was smiling. They cleaned up as the sun started its descent toward the horizon, washing brushes and hands, and throwing away paint-stained newspapers. Nathan showed Mia how to seal the paint can properly so it wouldn't dry out. Same time tomorrow for coat number 2, he suggested. Elena nodded. If you don't have other plans. My plans mostly involve sitting on my deck and staring at the ocean. This is better. Why? Mia asked, appearing at his elbow. Don't you like the ocean? I love the ocean, but sometimes it's nice to have company while you appreciate it. You can have company with us anytime, Mia said seriously. Right, Mama? Elena's expression flickered. Surprise, uncertainty, something that might have been hope. Yeah, anytime. Nathan felt something shift in his chest, warm and unfamiliar, and slightly terrifying. It had been so long since he'd felt anything except grief that he'd almost forgotten what connection felt like, what it meant to care about people who weren't blood or obligation. I should get going, he said, gathering his supplies. Let you guys have your evening. Mr. Nathan? Mia tugged on his shirt. Can I show you something before you go? Mia, Elena started, but Mia was already pulling Nathan toward the house. "It'll just take a second. Please, Mama?" Elena sighed but nodded, and Nathan let himself be led inside and down a short hallway to Mia's room. It was exactly what he'd expected. Stuffed animals everywhere, drawings taped to the walls, a small bed with princess sheets, and enough pillows for 3 kids. Mia pulled a shoebox from under her bed and opened it carefully. Inside were photographs, dozens of them, most featuring Mia at various ages, always with Elena, never with a man who could be her father. "This is my memory box," Mia explained. "Mama says it's important to keep pictures of the people we love so we never forget them." She pulled out a photo near the bottom. Elena, maybe 10 years younger, holding a tiny newborn with an expression of pure love and exhaustion. "That's me when I was brand new," Mia said. "Mama says I didn't sleep for 3 months, and she thought she was going to die from being tired." Nathan smiled. "New babies are tough." "Do you have pictures of your little girl?" "I do. Lots of them. Can I see sometime?" Nathan glanced at Elena, who'd appeared in the doorway, her expression unreadable. "If your mama says it's okay." Mia looked at her mother with those enormous pleading eyes. "Can we, Mama? Please?" Elena was quiet for a moment, and Nathan could see her weighing it, the risk of letting him further into their lives, the danger of Mia getting attached to someone who might leave. "Maybe next time Mr. Nathan comes over," she said finally, "if he wants to share." "I'd like that," Nathan said quietly. Mia carefully packed her memory box away, chattering about how they could show each other pictures and maybe make new memories together. Nathan felt the weight of that hope, the responsibility of being someone a child counted on. Elena walked him to the door, lingering on the porch as the sun painted the sky orange and pink. "She doesn't usually show people her box," Elena said quietly. That's special to her." "I'm honored." "Nathan." Elena's voice was serious now, almost urgent. "If you're going to be part of our lives, even just as a neighbor, I need to know you're staying. I can't let her get attached to someone who's going to disappear." Nathan understood the question beneath the question, the real fear. "I'm not going anywhere, Elena. I told Mia that, and I meant it. I'm here until at least the end of my lease, probably longer. And even if I moved, I wouldn't just vanish. That's not who I am." "People say that, then they leave anyway." "Sarah said that to me once," Nathan said quietly. "Right before she died. She was terrified I'd leave her, even though she knew it wasn't a choice. That cancer was taking her from me, not the other way around. I promised her I'd stay until the very end, no matter how hard it got, and I did." He met Elena's eyes. "I keep my promises, especially to kids who need someone to be steady." Elena studied his face in the fading light, searching for the lie, the weakness, the inevitable disappointment. "Okay," she said finally. "Okay." Nathan walked back to his house feeling lighter than he had in months, the sound of Mia's laughter still echoing in his ears, and the warmth of Elena's cautious trust settling somewhere near his heart. Inside, he pulled out his phone and scrolled through pictures of Lily at the park, at her birthday party, asleep on the couch with a book on her chest. His daughter, his purpose, the reason he kept getting out of bed even when everything hurt. He sent her a text. "Love you, Lil. Talk to you tomorrow." Her response came quickly. "Love you more than all the stars, Daddy." Nathan stared at those words for a long time, thinking about promises and staying power and the way life sometimes gave you second chances when you least expected them. He wasn't replacing Sarah, wasn't trying to build a new family to paper over the one he'd lost. But maybe, just maybe, he was learning how to be present again, how to show up for people who needed someone steady, how to be the kind of man Sarah had always believed he could be, even when he doubted himself. The bookshelf would need 2 more coats. Mia would want to paint other furniture. Elena would continue testing his commitment, watching for the moment he proved her right about men being unreliable. And Nathan would keep showing up, keep fixing things, keep being exactly what he'd promised. A man who stayed. Because that was the only thing that mattered anymore. 3 weeks passed in a rhythm that felt almost normal. Nathan finished the bookshelf with Mia, helped Elena fix a leaky faucet, built a small sandbox in her backyard that Mia declared the best thing that had ever happened to her. They fell into an easy pattern of morning coffee on their respective decks, weekend projects, and dinners that started as casual invitations and became something closer to tradition. Nathan felt himself coming back to life in small increments, like a plant slowly turning toward sunlight. He laughed more, slept better, started to believe that maybe grief didn't have to be a life sentence. Elena softened too, her walls lowering inch by careful inch. She smiled easier, touched his arm when she talked, let Mia drag Nathan into their world without quite so much fear in her eyes. They hadn't crossed any lines. Nathan was careful about that, conscious of not pushing for more than Elena was ready to give. But there was something building between them, fragile and real, that neither of them wanted to name out loud yet. It was a Tuesday morning when everything changed. Nathan was on his deck reading an email from his sister-in-law about Lily's upcoming school play when he heard the car. Expensive engine, the kind that purred instead of rumbled. He glanced up to see a black Mercedes pulling into Elena's driveway, gleaming in the morning sun like it had just rolled off the showroom floor. A man stepped out, and Nathan knew immediately who he was. Victor Hale dressed like money. Tailored slacks, crisp white shirt with the sleeves rolled just so, designer sunglasses that probably cost more than Nathan's truck. He was handsome in that calculated way some men were, with perfect hair and a smile that had been practiced in mirrors. Nathan's gut tightened with instinct older than thought. This was a predator. This was danger. Victor didn't knock, just walked up to Elena's door like he owned it and pushed it open, calling out in a voice that carried across both yards. "Elena? Where's my daughter?" Nathan was on his feet before he'd made a conscious decision to move, crossing into Elena's yard as Victor disappeared inside her house. He could hear voices now, Elena's sharp and defensive, Victor's smooth as oil. "You can't just walk in here, Victor. This is my home." "Our daughter's home. I have a right to see her." "You have scheduled visitation that you never use. You don't get to just show up whenever you feel like playing father." Nathan reached the door just as Mia appeared at the top of the stairs, her eyes wide with fear. She saw Victor and went still, frozen like a rabbit sensing a fox. "There's my girl," Victor said, his voice shifting to something saccharine. "Come give Daddy a hug." Mia didn't move. Her eyes found Nathan in the doorway, and something in her small face broke his heart. A silent plea for help from someone she'd learned to trust. "Mia, come here," Victor said again, his voice hardening slightly. "Don't be rude." "She doesn't want to," Elena said, moving to block Victor's path to the stairs. "And you need to leave." "I'm not leaving without seeing my daughter." Victor's pleasant mask slipped, revealing something uglier beneath. "I've been patient, Elena. I've given you space. But I have rights." "Rights you haven't exercised in 8 months," Elena shot back. "You missed her birthday, missed Christmas, haven't paid a dime in child support. You don't get to waltz in here and make demands." That's when Victor noticed Nathan, his eyes narrowed, assessing. "Who the hell are you?" "Neighbor," Nathan said calmly, not moving from the doorway. "Nathan Cole." "Well, Nathan Cole, this is a family matter. You can go back to whatever you were doing. I'm good right here." Victor's smile turned sharp. "Ah, I see. Elena, you're fucking the neighbor now? That was fast. How long's it been? A month? 2? "Watch your mouth," Nathan said, his voice dropping to something dangerous. "There's a child present." "My child," Victor snapped. "And I'll speak however I want in front of her. Elena's had her long enough to poison her against me. It's time Mia learned what a real father looks like." Elena's hands were shaking now, her voice tight with barely controlled fear. "Get out, Victor, before I call the police." "On what grounds? I'm her father. I have every legal right to be here." "You have supervised visitation rights that you haven't used in 8 months, Elena said. "And those rights don't include breaking into my home." "I didn't break in. The door was unlocked." Victor pulled out his phone. "But since you want to play legal games, let's call my attorney. See what he thinks about you denying me access to my daughter while you're shacking up with some random guy." Nathan saw where this was going. The manipulation, the threats wrapped in legal language, the way Victor was using the system as a weapon. He'd seen men like this in his old life, corporate sharks who used rules and power to get what they wanted, regardless of who got hurt. But he'd also seen them beaten. It just took the right approach. Elena, Nathan said quietly, not taking his eyes off Victor. Take Mia upstairs. I'm not going anywhere, Elena said, but Nathan could hear the tremor in her voice. Yes, you are. Take Mia upstairs and stay there until I call for you. Nathan's voice was calm, certain. Trust me. Elena hesitated, then seemed to see something in Nathan's expression that decided her. She moved to the stairs, scooping up Mia, who buried her face in her mother's shoulder. This is ridiculous, Victor said, laughing without humor. You think you can intimidate me? Do you have any idea who I am? What I can afford to do? Nathan waited until he heard Elena's bedroom door close upstairs. Then he stepped fully into the house and shut the front door behind him, putting himself between Victor and the stairs. Here's what's going to happen, Nathan said quietly. You're going to leave. Right now. And you're not going to come back unless Elena agrees to supervised visitation through the proper legal channels. Victor laughed. And who's going to make me? You? Please. I could have you arrested for assault if you touch me. I'm not going to touch you, Nathan said. But I'm going to stand here until you leave. And if you try to go upstairs, I'll call the police myself and explain that you forced entry into a home where you're not welcome and attempted to take a child against the custodial parent's wishes. I didn't force anything. The door was unlocked. Yeah, you said that. Nathan pulled out his phone. But here's the thing about unlocked doors, Victor. They don't grant permission to enter. That's still trespassing, especially when the occupant tells you to leave and you refuse. Victor's expression darkened. You don't know what you're dealing with. Sure I do. I'm dealing with a man who uses money and intimidation to control people because he's too weak to build anything real. Nathan's voice stayed level, almost conversational. I've known plenty of men like you. They're all the same, big in the boardroom, pathetic everywhere else. You arrogant... Victor took a step forward, his hands clenching. Nathan didn't move, didn't even tense. Just watched Victor with the calm certainty of someone who'd already mapped out the next 3 moves. Go ahead, take a swing. Give me a reason to defend myself. I'm sure your attorney will love explaining to a judge why you assaulted someone while illegally in your ex's home. Victor stopped, breathing hard, his face flushed with rage. You think you're protecting her? You think you matter? You're nothing, a placeholder. The second she realizes you're just another broke loser playing hero, she'll throw you out like she did everyone else. Maybe, Nathan said, but that's her choice to make, not yours. You lost the right to make choices for Elena when you decided control was more important than love. You don't know anything about us. I know enough. I know she's terrified of you. I know Mia runs the other direction when she sees you. I know you haven't paid child support, haven't shown up for visitation, haven't done a single thing that actual fathers do. Nathan's voice hardened. You're not here because you love that little girl. You're here because you can't stand the idea that Elena's building a life without you in it. The truth of it landed like a punch. Victor's face went white, then red, his hands shaking with fury. I'm going to destroy you. I'm going to destroy her. By the time my attorneys are done, your attorneys can send their letters to mine, Nathan interrupted. I'm sure they'll have a fascinating conversation about custody interference and harassment and how judges tend to view fathers who threaten mothers in front of witnesses. He tilted his head. Or you could just leave. Walk away. Let Elena and Mia have the peace you've never given them. Victor stared at him for a long moment, and Nathan could see the calculation happening behind his eyes. The cost-benefit analysis. The realization that whatever power he'd had here was slipping away. This isn't over, Victor said finally, his voice low and venomous. Yes, it is. Nathan stepped aside from the door, opening it. Have a nice drive back to whatever hole you crawled out of. Victor grabbed his sunglasses from where he'd set them on the side table and stormed out, his expensive shoes loud on the wooden steps. Nathan watched until the Mercedes pulled out of the driveway and disappeared down the street, then closed the door and locked it. His hands were shaking. Adrenaline and anger and something close to fear because he'd just made himself a target, inserted himself fully into a situation that could get very ugly very fast. But when he climbed the stairs and knocked softly on Elena's door, When she opened it with tears streaming down her face and Mia still clinging to her, he knew he'd made the right choice. "He's gone," Nathan said quietly. Elena sagged against the doorframe like her strings had been cut. "He'll come back. He always comes back." "Not if we don't let him." Nathan crouched down to Mia's level. "Hey, sweetheart, you okay?" Mia peered at him from her mother's shoulder, her face blotchy from crying. "I don't like him." "I know. That's okay. You don't have to like him. He's mean to Mama." "Yeah, he is. But he's gone now, and we're going to make sure he can't be mean to either of you anymore." Mia seemed to consider this, then slowly unwound herself from Elena and threw her arms around Nathan's neck instead. "Thank you for making him leave." Nathan held her carefully, his throat tight. "Any time, kiddo. Any time." Elena sank down to the floor, her back against the wall, and covered her face with her hands. Nathan could see her shoulders shaking with silent sobs, all the fear and exhaustion of years finally breaking through. "Mia," Nathan said gently, "why don't you go get your stuffed animals? I bet they're scared too and could use some hugs." Mia nodded seriously and disappeared into her room. The second she was gone, Elena let out a sound that was half sob, half laugh. "I can't believe you did that," she said, her voice muffled behind her hands. "I can't believe you just stood up to him like that." Nathan sat down beside her, close but not touching. Someone should have done it a long time ago. "You don't understand. He has money, lawyers. He can make our lives hell." "Let him try." Nathan's voice was calm, certain. "We'll document everything, get a restraining order if we need to, make sure every interaction goes through the courts. He's got power, but he's also got a pattern of abandonment and intimidation. Judges notice that." "You sound like you know what you're talking about." "I used to work in finance. Corporate law was part of the game." Nathan leaned his head back against the wall. "I know how men like Victor operate. They're bullies with briefcases. They count on people being too scared or too broke to fight back. But if you stand your ground, document everything, don't let them intimidate you into settling. They usually back down." Elena finally lowered her hands, her eyes red and swollen. "What if he doesn't back down? What if he actually files for custody?" "Then we fight him. And we win." Nathan turned to look at her. "You're a good mother, Elena. Anyone can see that. Mia's thriving. She's happy, healthy, well-adjusted. You've built a stable life for her. Victor's got money, but he doesn't have a relationship with his daughter. He doesn't have consistency. He doesn't have love." He paused. "Courts care about what's best for the child, and what's best for Mia is staying with you." "How can you be so sure?" "Because I've seen the alternative." Nathan's voice went quiet. "After Sarah died, I could have fought to keep Lily with me. Could have insisted I was fine, that we'd figure it out together. But I wasn't fine. I was drowning, and keeping her with me would have been about what I needed, not what she needed." He met Elena's eyes. "You've always put Mia first. That's obvious in everything you do. Victor's only thinking about himself. That difference matters." Elena was quiet for a long moment, her breathing slowly steadying. "I'm scared." "I know. Not just of Victor, of—" She gestured helplessly between them. "This, whatever this is, I'm scared of letting you in and then losing you. I'm scared of Mia getting more attached when you might—" "I'm not going anywhere," Nathan interrupted gently. "I've told you that. I've told Mia that. How many times do I have to say it before you believe me?" "I don't know," Elena whispered. "Maybe I can't believe it. Maybe I'm too broken." Nathan reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. Her fingers were cold, trembling. "You're not broken. You're careful. There's a difference. Victor said I was damaged goods. Said no one would ever want someone as messed up as me. Victor's a liar who needed you to believe that so you wouldn't leave him." Nathan squeezed her hand gently. "But you did leave. You packed up your daughter and you built a whole life without him. That's not damage. That's strength." Elena's eyes filled with fresh tears. "Why are you so nice to me?" "Because you deserve nice. Because Mia deserves to see her mother treated with respect. Because I spent 6 months after Sarah died thinking I'd never care about anyone again, and then I moved next door to a woman in a red bikini who looked like she was daring the ocean to swallow her whole. He smiled slightly. And I guess I wanted to see what happened if someone actually saw you instead of just looking. Nathan, you don't have to say anything, he interrupted. I'm not asking for anything except to be here, to help, to be the steady thing you can count on while you fight Victor and figure out what comes next. What if I want more than that? Elena's voice was barely audible. What if I'm starting to feel things I'm not ready to feel? Nathan's heart kicked hard against his ribs. Then we go slow. As slow as you need. There's no rush, Elena. I'm not going anywhere. She studied his face like she was searching for the crack, the weakness, the inevitable moment when he'd prove her right about men being unreliable. But Nathan just held her hand and waited, letting her see whatever she needed to see. Finally, she leaned her head against his shoulder. Just that. Nothing more. But Nathan felt the weight of trust in that simple gesture, the enormous leap of faith it represented. Okay, she whispered. Okay. Mia reappeared with an armload of stuffed animals, completely oblivious to the moment she was interrupting. I think Mr. Bear is the most scared. He needs extra hugs. Nathan released Elena's hand and accepted Mr. Bear solemnly. Then we'd better make sure he knows he's safe. They spent the next hour in Mia's room, having an elaborate tea party where all the stuffed animals discussed their feelings about the scary man who'd come to the house. Mia directed the whole thing with the seriousness of a therapist, making sure each animal got to express their fears and receive appropriate comfort. Elena watched from the doorway, and when Nathan glanced up at her, she mouthed 2 words. Thank you. Nathan nodded and turned back to Mr. Bear, who apparently needed reassurance that monsters, even the humankind, couldn't get you if you had good people watching over you. It was the truest thing Nathan had said all day. That evening, after Mia had been put to bed and Elena had checked the locks on every door and window twice, she knocked on Nathan's door. He opened it to find her standing there in jeans and an oversized sweater, her hair down, her face scrubbed clean of the day's tears. I can't sleep, she said simply, and I don't want to be alone. Nathan stepped aside without a word, and she entered his house for only the second time. He poured them both wine, the terrible kind he'd mentioned weeks ago, which turned out to be not that terrible, and they sat on his couch in comfortable silence. Tell me about Sarah, Elena said finally, if you want to. Nathan took a long drink, letting the memories surface. She was a teacher, 2nd grade. She loved kids in that way some people do, completely, without reservation. She made every single one of her students feel special. He smiled, the ache in his chest familiar now. We met at a bookstore. She was buying children's books for her classroom, and I was pretending to understand literary fiction. She told me the book I was holding was terrible, then recommended 3 better ones. We had coffee, then dinner. Then I knew. Knew what? That she was it, the person I'd been waiting for without knowing I was waiting. Elena was quiet, processing. How long were you married? 8 years? Together for 10. Nathan stared into his wine. She got sick 3 years ago, breast cancer. We thought we'd beaten it. Then it came back everywhere, all at once. She died 6 months ago, almost to the day. I'm sorry. Me too. Nathan set down his glass. The worst part wasn't losing her, though that was bad enough. It was watching her be scared. Sarah was never scared of anything. But at the end, when she knew she was dying, she was terrified. Not of death, of leaving Lily, of me being alone, of all the moments she'd miss. What did you say to her? I lied, Nathan said quietly. I told her we'd be fine, that Lily would grow up knowing how much her mother loved her, that I'd be okay, that she didn't have to worry. He paused. But I wasn't fine. I was so far from fine, I didn't even know what direction fine was anymore. And Lily, his voice broke slightly. Lily kept asking when Mommy was coming home, and I didn't know how to explain that Mommy was never coming home. Elena reached out and took his hand, and Nathan felt the simple comfort of being understood by someone who knew what it was like to rebuild yourself from broken pieces. Is that why you let her stay with your sister-in-law? Yeah, I couldn't be what she needed. Not then. Maybe not now either, but I'm trying. You're a good father, Elena said firmly. A bad father wouldn't have made that choice. A bad father would have kept her out of selfishness and let her suffer for it. Or maybe I'm a coward who couldn't handle his own grief. Or maybe you're a father who loved his daughter enough to give her what she needed, even when it broke your heart. Elena squeezed his hand. That's the opposite of cowardice. Nathan looked at her, really looked at her, and saw someone who'd fought her own battles with fear and failure and come out the other side still standing, still trying, still brave enough to sit on a widower's couch and hold his hand while he talked about the wife he'd lost. "We're quite a pair," he said softly. "Yeah, we really are." Elena smiled, sad and real. Two broken people trying to figure out how to be whole again. "Maybe we don't have to be whole," Nathan suggested. "Maybe we just have to be honest about the cracks." They sat together as the night deepened, talking about Sarah and Victor, about Lily and Mia, about the ways life broke you and the ways you learned to live with being broken. It wasn't romantic, wasn't healing in any magical sense, but it was real. And for two people who'd learned not to trust easy answers or pretty promises, real was enough. When Elena finally left, standing on his porch under a sky full of stars, she turned back one more time. "Nathan, what you did today, standing up to Victor, was the right thing to do," he finished. "It was more than that. It was—" She struggled for words. "It was the first time anyone's ever protected me like that, without expecting something in return. You don't have to give me anything, Elena. Not gratitude, not obligation, not—" "I know," she interrupted. "That's what makes it matter." She kissed his cheek, brief, chaste, but deliberate, then disappeared into the darkness between their houses. Nathan stood there long after she'd gone, his hand touching the place her lips had been, and felt something very much like hope taking root in his chest. Victor would come back. Men like that always did. The fight was far from over, but for the first time since Sarah died, Nathan felt ready to fight for something other than just surviving the next day. He was ready to fight for someone who needed him to be strong, and maybe, just maybe, for the chance to learn how to love again. The letter arrived 4 days later, delivered by a courier who made Elena sign for it, with hands that shook so badly she could barely hold the pen. Nathan was there within minutes of her text, finding her on her back deck, staring at the unopened envelope like it might explode. "It's from Victor's attorney," she said, her voice hollow. "I knew it was coming. I just thought I'd have more time." Nathan sat down beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "You want me to open it?" She handed it over without a word, and Nathan slid his finger under the seal. The letter was exactly what he'd expected. Legal letterhead, formal language, and underneath all the professional veneer, a threat. Victor Hale was petitioning for joint custody, claiming that Elena had denied him access to his daughter, that she was living with an unvetted male, that the current arrangement was not in the child's best interest. "It's all lies," Elena whispered, reading over his shoulder. "I never denied him access. He just never showed up." "I know, and we can prove that." Nathan set the letter down carefully. "Do you have documentation? Records of the visitation schedule? Proof that he missed his times?" "Some. I kept a calendar for a while, marked the days he was supposed to come. But I stopped after the first year because he literally never came." Her voice cracked. "What if that's not enough? What if the court looks at this and sees a father trying to be involved and a mother keeping him away? That's not what they'll see. Not if we handle this right." Nathan turned to face her fully. "Elena, you need a lawyer, a good one, someone who specializes in custody cases." "I can't afford that kind of lawyer. The ones who are any good charge hundreds of dollars an hour." "Then we find one who works on a sliding scale, or who'll take payments, or—" Nathan stopped, an idea forming. "My firm. Before I left, before Sarah got sick, I did some work with a family law attorney. She was brilliant. Let me reach out, see if she has any recommendations in this area." "Nathan, I can't ask you to—" "You're not asking, I'm offering." He took her hands, waiting until she met his eyes. "You're not alone in this, Elena. Not anymore." She stared at him for a long moment, tears spilling over and tracking down her cheeks. "Why? Why are you doing all this for us?" Nathan thought about that question, about all the easy answers he could give, because it was the right thing, because Sarah would have wanted him to help, because Mia needed protection. But the truth was more complicated than that, more personal. Because when Sarah was dying, I made a promise that I'd stay present, that I wouldn't let grief turn me into someone who looked away from pain. He paused, choosing his words carefully. But if I'm being completely honest, it's not just about keeping a promise anymore. It's about you and Mia. You've both become, he struggled for the right word, important to me. And I don't want to see you hurt by some asshole who thinks power is a substitute for love. Elena's breath caught. Nathan, you don't have to say anything, he said quickly. I'm not asking for anything except to help. However I can, for as long as you need. She kissed him then, sudden and fierce, her hands fisting in his shirt like she was afraid he might disappear if she let go. Nathan froze for a heartbeat, surprised, then kissed her back with all the careful restraint of a man who knew broken things needed gentle handling. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Elena rested her forehead against his. I'm terrified, she whispered. I know. Not just of Victor, of this, of feeling things for you when everything's so complicated. Then we don't have to call it anything yet, Nathan said quietly. We just take it one day at a time. Deal with Victor first. Figure out the rest later. Elena nodded, her hand still gripping his shirt. Okay. One day at a time. The sound of Mia calling from inside broke the moment, and Elena pulled away reluctantly, wiping her eyes. I should go. I'll make those calls about lawyers. Nathan stood, helping her up. We'll figure this out, Elena. I promise. She squeezed his hand once, then disappeared inside to where Mia was asking about lunch, with the eternal optimism of children who still believed problems could be solved with peanut butter sandwiches. Nathan walked back to his house and pulled out his laptop, scrolling through old contacts until he found the name he was looking for. Jennifer Marks. They'd worked together on a merger that had gone south, and she'd impressed him with her combination of sharp intelligence and genuine compassion. If anyone could help Elena, it would be her. He sent an email explaining the situation in broad strokes, asking if she knew anyone in the area who handled custody cases with the kind of intensity this would require. Then he called his sister-in-law. Nathan? Marie's voice was warm, surprised. Is everything okay? You don't usually call on weekdays. I need a favor. Legal advice, actually. What kind of legal advice? Nathan explained about Elena, about Victor, about the custody petition that had arrived that morning. Marie listened without interrupting, and when he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Nathan, she said carefully, how involved are you with this woman? Involved enough to want to help. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have right now. Nathan ran a hand through his hair. Marie, I know it's complicated. I know it's only been 6 months since Sarah died. But Elena and Mia, they need help, and I'm in a position to give it. I'm not judging, Marie said gently. I'm just worried about you getting invested in someone else's legal battle when you're still dealing with your own grief. Maybe helping them is how I deal with it. Nathan stared out at the ocean, watching the waves roll in with their endless patience. Maybe this is what moving forward looks like. Marie sighed. Okay, I have a friend from law school who practices family law in North Carolina. She's based in Wilmington, but she might know someone closer to you. Let me reach out. Thank you. Nathan, be careful with your heart. You're allowed to care about someone new, but make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. What are the right reasons? The ones that have nothing to do with guilt or grief or trying to save someone to make up for not being able to save Sarah. The words hit harder than Nathan expected, landing somewhere tender and true. I'll be careful, he said quietly. Good. I'll call you back tonight with what I find. After they hung up, Nathan sat on his deck and thought about Marie's warning. Was he trying to save Elena to assuage his guilt about Sarah? Was this about redemption or something real? He didn't have a clean answer. Grief and attraction and the simple human need for connection were all tangled together in ways he couldn't separate. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. When he was with Elena and Mia, when he was helping fix a bookshelf or standing between them and danger, he felt more like himself than he had in months. Not the man he'd been before Sarah died. That person was gone forever. But someone new. someone who'd learned hard lessons about what mattered and what was just noise. That evening, both Marie and Jennifer came through. Jennifer recommended a lawyer named Patricia Chen, who specialized in high-conflict custody cases and had a reputation for being both brilliant and fierce. Marie's contact knew Patricia personally and vouched for her competence. Nathan called Elena with the news, and they arranged to meet with Patricia the following week. "How much is this going to cost?" Elena asked, her voice tight with anxiety. Patricia works on a sliding scale for cases involving domestic control issues. I already talked to her. She's willing to meet with you first before discussing fees. Nathan, I can't let you pay for my lawyer. I'm not offering to pay. I'm just making the introduction. He paused. But if you need help with fees, we'll figure something out. Payment plans, fundraising, whatever it takes. Why are you so determined to help me? Nathan smiled even though she couldn't see him. Because you kissed me this morning, and I'd like the chance to see where that goes. Hard to do that if you're stressed about custody battles. Elena's laugh was watery but genuine. That's a terrible reason. It's an honest reason. Yeah, she said softly. I guess it is. They talked for another hour about nothing important. What Mia had eaten for dinner, a funny thing that had happened at the grocery store, the way the sunset had painted the ocean gold. Normal things, easy things. The kind of conversation people had when they were building something together, even if neither of them wanted to name what that something was yet. After they hung up, Nathan made himself dinner and tried not to think about the fact that he was falling for a woman whose life was complicated in ways his marriage to Sarah had never been. Sarah had been easy to love, uncomplicated, open, certain. Elena was guarded and scared and came with a daughter who needed stability and an ex who was determined to make their lives hell. But maybe that was exactly what Nathan needed. Not easy, not uncomplicated, just real, messy, and worth fighting for. His phone buzzed with a text from Lily. Aunt Marie says you're helping a friend with legal stuff. Are you okay? Nathan smiled at his daughter's worry, at the way she was learning to read between the lines of adult conversations. I'm good, sweetheart. Just being a good neighbor. Is your neighbor nice? Very nice. She has a daughter about your age. I think you'd like her. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Do you like the neighbor, Dad? Like? Nathan stared at the question, caught between honesty and the desire to protect Lily from complications she didn't need to carry. Finally, he typed, I'm not sure yet, but she makes me smile. Is that okay? The response came quickly. Mom would want you to smile. She told me that before she died. She said you needed to remember how. Nathan's throat closed up completely. He could see Sarah so clearly, sitting on the edge of Lily's bed in those final weeks, whispering things she needed her daughter to remember after she was gone, making sure Lily knew how to give her father permission to live again. I love you, Lil. More than all the stars. Love you too, Daddy. Talk tomorrow? Absolutely. Nathan set down his phone and let himself cry for the first time in weeks. Not the harsh, tearing sobs of early grief, but something softer. Sadness mixed with gratitude for a wife who'd loved him enough to set him free, for a daughter who was brave enough to want him happy, for a neighbor who'd kissed him on a deck overlooking the ocean and made him believe in second chances. The meeting with Patricia Chen happened on a Thursday morning at her office in a small building off Main Street. Nathan went with Elena for moral support, sitting in the waiting room with Mia while Elena explained the situation to the lawyer. Mia was quiet, coloring in a book Nathan had brought, but he could see the tension in her small shoulders. She understood more than anyone gave her credit for, knew that the scary man wanted something, knew that her mother was afraid, knew that whatever was happening was big and bad. Mr. Nathan? Mia looked up from her coloring. Is Mama going to be okay? Nathan set down the magazine he'd been pretending to read. Yeah, sweetheart, your Mama's really strong, and she's got good people helping her now. Including you? Especially me. Mia considered this, then went back to her coloring. Good, because I think you make Mama happy. She smiles more when you're around. Yeah? What about you? Am I okay in your book? Mia looked at him very seriously. You're the best. Even better than ice cream. And I really like ice cream. Nathan laughed despite the weight of the situation. That's high praise. It's true, though. Mia returned her attention to her coloring book, this conversation apparently complete in her 6-year-old mind. Elena emerged from Patricia's office 40 minutes later, her eyes red but her expression determined. Patricia followed, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s with gray hair cut short and an air of competence that Nathan found immediately reassuring. "Mr. Cole?" Patricia extended her hand. "Elena mentioned you've been helping with documentation. I'd like to get your statement about Mr. Hale's visit, if you're willing." "Absolutely, whatever you need. Come on back, this shouldn't take long." Nathan glanced at Elena, who nodded. "I'll stay with Mia." In Patricia's office, Nathan recounted everything about Victor's visit, the forced entry, the intimidation, the things Victor had said, the way Mia had reacted. Patricia took notes in quick, efficient handwriting, asking clarifying questions that showed she knew exactly what details would matter in court. "This is good," she said when Nathan finished. "Very good, actually. Witnesses to erratic behavior are invaluable in custody cases, especially witnesses who have no prior relationship to either party." "What are Elena's chances?" Patricia set down her pen. "Honestly, strong. Victor has an established pattern of absence. He hasn't paid support, hasn't maintained consistent visitation, and his sudden interest in custody coincides with Elena building a stable life for herself. That looks retaliatory to judges. Add in your testimony about his behavior, and we have a solid case." She paused. "But I won't lie to you, he has money, and money can draw things out, make them expensive and exhausting. Elena needs to be prepared for a fight." "She is," Nathan said firmly, "and she's not alone." Patricia studied him. "You care about her?" It wasn't a question, but Nathan answered anyway. "Yeah, I do." "Good. She'll need people in her corner." Patricia stood, gathering her files. "I'm taking this case. We'll start with a response to his petition, then file a motion to enforce the existing custody agreement. If he wants access to Mia, he'll have to prove he's actually interested in being a father, not just winning a legal battle." Relief flooded through Nathan. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. Thank me when we win." They emerged to find Elena and Mia building a tower out of waiting room magazines, both laughing when it collapsed. The sound of their happiness, fragile but real, made Nathan's chest ache in the best possible way. "We're going to fight this," Patricia told Elena, "and we're going to win." Elena's smile was tremulous but genuine. "I believe you." Walking back to Nathan's truck, Mia between them holding both their hands, Nathan felt something settle into place. This was what family looked like now, not the one he'd lost, but the one he was building. Imperfect, complicated, and worth every bit of effort it would take to protect. The weeks that followed fell into a new rhythm. Patricia filed their response to Victor's petition, meticulously documenting every missed visitation, every unpaid support payment, every piece of evidence that showed Victor's interest in Mia had nothing to do with fatherhood and everything to do with control. Victor's attorney fired back with accusations and demands, trying to make Elena look unstable, unfit. They claimed she was living with a man who wasn't Mia's father, exposing her daughter to inappropriate relationships. "It's bullshit," Nathan said when Elena showed him the latest filing, her hands shaking. "I don't even live with you. I'm your neighbor." "They're going to make it sound like something it's not," Elena said, her voice tight. "They're going to twist everything." "Let them try. We have truth on our side." But Elena was pulling away. Nathan could feel it. The stress of the custody battle was eating at her, making her second-guess everything, including him. She started declining his dinner invitations, keeping their interactions brief and surface level. She wouldn't meet his eyes when they talked. Finally, 3 weeks into the legal back and forth, she stopped answering his texts altogether. Nathan gave her space for 2 days, then 3, watching her house from his deck and seeing lights on but no sign of Elena or Mia. On the 4th day, he couldn't take it anymore. He walked over and knocked. No answer. He knocked again. "Elena, I know you're in there. I can see your car." Silence. "I'm not leaving until we talk. I'll sit on your porch all night if I have to." More silence. Then finally the door opened. Elena stood there in sweatpants and a t-shirt, her hair unwashed, her eyes hollow. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. "What do you want, Nathan?" The coldness in her voice hit him like a slap. I want to know why you're shutting me out. Because this is too hard. Because I can't deal with Victor in a custody battle and whatever this is between us all at the same time. Her voice rose, brittle with stress. I need to focus on Mia, on keeping her safe. I can't. She broke off, her hands shaking. I can't afford distractions right now. I'm not a distraction. I'm someone who cares about you and wants to help. That's the problem. Elena's voice cracked. You're too good, Nathan. Too helpful, too present, too everything. And when this falls apart, when you realize how messy my life is and how damaged I am, you're going to leave, just like everyone else. And I can't. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I can't survive you leaving, not on top of everything else. Nathan felt his heart break for this woman who'd been hurt so many times she couldn't recognize safety when it was standing on her porch. I'm not going to leave. You say that now. I say that every time, and I mean it every time. Nathan took a careful step forward. Elena, look at me, please. She raised her eyes reluctantly, and Nathan saw the fear there, the bone-deep terror of trusting someone who might prove untrustworthy. I'm not Victor, Nathan said quietly. I'm not your father or any of the other men who taught you that love comes with conditions. I'm just a guy who lost his wife and found his way to a beach town where he met a woman who was brave enough to leave a bad situation and build a good life for her daughter. A woman who's strong and scared and doing the best she can. And I like her. A lot. Enough that I'm willing to stand in the mess with her instead of running from it. For how long? Elena's voice was barely audible. How long until you get tired of the drama and the legal bills and the broken woman who can't trust anyone? As long as it takes, Nathan said simply. I'm not going anywhere, Elena. Not when Victor shows up. Not when the custody battle gets ugly. Not when you push me away because you're scared. I'm staying. You can't promise that. Yes, I can. Because I've already lived through the worst thing that can happen to a person. I've already lost someone I loved more than my own life. I've already been as broken as a human can be and still keep breathing. Nathan took another step closer. And you know what I learned? That running from hard things doesn't make them easier. That avoiding connection because you're scared of loss just means you lose twice. Once when it ends, and once because you never really let yourself have it in the first place. Tears were streaming down Elena's face now. I don't know how to do this. How to let someone in when everything in me is screaming to protect myself. Then don't let me all the way in yet. Just don't lock me out. Nathan stopped just short of touching her. Let me stay on the porch. Let me be here when you need me. Let me prove that I mean what I say. And if I can't, if I'm too broken to ever really trust you, then we figure it out together, one day at a time, one choice at a time. Nathan's voice went soft. I'm not asking you to be perfect, Elena. I'm just asking you not to give up on us before we even start. She stared at him for a long moment, and Nathan could see the war happening behind her eyes, fear battling hope, self-protection fighting against the desperate human need for connection. Finally, she stepped back and opened the door wider. Come in. It wasn't a declaration of trust, wasn't a promise that everything would be okay, but it was a choice to not push him away, to let him stay, even when staying was terrifying. Nathan stepped inside, and Elena closed the door behind him, leaning against it like she needed the support to stay standing. He didn't reach for her, didn't try to fix anything, just stood there in her living room, waiting for her to decide what came next. I made coffee, she said finally. It's probably terrible by now, but I'll take terrible coffee. They sat at her kitchen table, 2 mugs of lukewarm coffee between them, and Elena told him everything. About the nightmares Mia had been having, about the anxiety that made Elena's hands shake whenever her phone rang, about the crushing weight of trying to be strong enough for her daughter while falling apart inside. Nathan listened without trying to solve anything, understanding that sometimes people just needed to be heard, to have someone bear witness to their pain without trying to minimize it or rush them through it. When she finally ran out of words, Elena rubbed her eyes tiredly. I'm sorry for shutting you out, for being human, Nathan interrupted gently, for being scared and overwhelmed and trying to protect yourself and your daughter. You don't have to apologize for that. I feel like all I do is apologize to you. Then stop apologizing and just let me be here. Elena looked at him across the table, and something in her expression shifted, softened. Okay, I'll try. That's all I'm asking. They finished their terrible coffee in silence that felt comfortable instead of awkward, and when Nathan finally stood to leave, Elena walked him to the door and caught his hand before he could step outside. Nathan, thank you for not giving up on me. Never, he said simply, and meant it with every cell in his body. As he walked back to his house under a sky full of stars, Nathan felt the weight of what he'd just signed up for. A custody battle that could drag on for months. A woman who was terrified of trusting him. A little girl who needed stability in a world that kept threatening to shake apart. But he'd meant what he said. He wasn't going anywhere. Because some promises were worth keeping, no matter how hard they got. And this one, the promise to stay, to be steady, to be the father who didn't leave, was the most important promise Nathan had made since he'd told Sarah he'd love her for better or worse. He was choosing Elena and Mia, choosing to fight for them, choosing to build something real out of broken pieces and second chances. And for the first time since Sarah died, that choice didn't feel like betrayal. It felt like finally learning how to live again. The custody hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in late July, nearly 2 months after Victor's lawyer had filed the petition. 2 months of sleepless nights and mounting legal fees and Patricia Chen working miracles with limited resources. 2 months of Nathan showing up every single day, proving through consistent presence that his promise to stay wasn't just words. Elena sat in Nathan's truck the morning of the hearing, her hands twisted together in her lap, her face pale beneath carefully applied makeup. Mia was with a neighbor, spared from having to see the inside of a courtroom where adults would decide her future like she was property to be divided. What if we lose? Elena's voice was barely audible over the engine. Nathan reached across and took one of her hands, stilling its anxious movement. We won't. You can't know that. No, he admitted. But I know Patricia's good. I know we have documentation and witnesses and the truth on our side. And I know that you're a damn good mother who's done everything right. He squeezed her hand gently. That has to count for something. Elena turned to look at him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. What if it doesn't? What if the judge looks at Victor with his expensive suit and his lawyers and decides that money matters more than love? Then we appeal. We fight harder. We don't give up. Nathan's voice was steady, certain. I told you I wasn't going anywhere. That includes courtrooms. She held his gaze for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, let's go face the bastard. The courthouse was exactly what Nathan expected. Marble floors, echoing hallways, the particular smell of anxiety and old coffee that seemed to permeate every government building. Patricia met them at the entrance, looking sharp in a navy suit, her gray hair pulled back severely. Ready? She asked Elena. No, but let's do this anyway. They made their way to the courtroom, and Nathan felt Elena tense beside him when she spotted Victor. He was there with 2 attorneys, both in suits that probably cost more than Nathan's truck, looking confident and completely at ease, like this was just another business transaction to win. Victor's eyes found Elena, then slid to Nathan, and something ugly flickered across his face. Possession. Anger. The particular rage of a man who couldn't stand that something he discarded had found value elsewhere. Mr. Cole. One of Victor's attorneys, a woman with sharp features and sharper eyes, approached them. I'm Amanda Richardson. We should talk before the hearing. I don't think we have anything to discuss, Nathan said evenly. I think we do. My client is willing to drop the custody petition entirely if Ms. Moore agrees to supervise visitation on a schedule we determine and if you agree to stay away from his daughter. Elena's hand tightened on Nathan's arm, her breathing going shallow. This was the play then. Victor didn't actually want Mia, he just wanted to punish Elena for moving on. No, Nathan said simply. Mr. Cole, you should think carefully. I said no, and it's not my decision to make, it's Elena's. Amanda's smile was thin. Ms. Moore, surely you can see the benefit of avoiding a prolonged legal battle. All we're asking is that you maintain appropriate boundaries while co-parenting. Having your boyfriend play house with my client's daughter creates an unstable environment. He's not my boyfriend, Elena said quietly, then seemed to gather strength. He's a friend who's been more present in Mia's life in 3 months than Victor has been in 6 years. And I'm not negotiating with you in a hallway. If Victor wants to talk custody, he can do it in front of a judge. Amanda's expression hardened. You're making a mistake. Probably not my first and definitely not my last, Elena said, but it's my mistake to make. They left Amanda standing there and found seats on their side of the courtroom. Patricia leaned over, her expression approving. Well done. They were trying to rattle you before we even started. Did it work? Elena whispered. You're still here, aren't you? That's all that matters. The judge, a woman in her 60s named Barbara Henderson, according to the nameplate, entered and everyone stood. Nathan watched her face as she reviewed the files in front of her, trying to read some hint of which way this would go. But Judge Henderson's expression was carefully neutral, giving nothing away. We're here for the petition filed by Victor Hale seeking modification of the existing custody arrangement for the minor child Mia Rose Moore, Judge Henderson said. Mr. Hale, you're represented by Mrs. Richardson and Mr. Chow. Mrs. Moore, you're represented by Mrs. Chen. Is that correct? Both sides confirmed, and the hearing began. Victor's attorneys went first, painting a picture of a concerned father who'd been systematically denied access to his daughter by a vindictive mother. They presented a timeline of Victor's attempts to see Mia, carefully worded emails requesting visitation, and claimed that Elena had used every excuse to keep them apart. It was masterfully done, Nathan had to admit. If he hadn't known the truth, he might have believed it. Then Patricia stood up for cross-examination, and Nathan saw why Elena's lawyer had a reputation for being fierce. Mr. Hale, Patricia said, her voice pleasant but sharp. You claim you've been trying to maintain a relationship with your daughter. Can you tell the court the last time you actually saw Mia? Victor consulted with his attorneys. January 15th of this year. And before that? I'd have to check my records. Allow me to help. According to the visitation logs, you saw Mia on January 15th for approximately 45 minutes. Before that, your last visit was September 3rd of the previous year, a gap of over 4 months. Does that sound correct? Victor's jaw tightened. I have a demanding career. Sometimes scheduling is difficult. I see. And during those 4 months, how many times did you call to speak with your daughter? I sent emails to Elena requesting calls, but she rarely responded. Patricia pulled out a folder. I have copies of all email correspondence between you and Ms. Moore for the past 2 years. In those 4 months, you sent exactly 3 emails. Ms. Moore responded to all 3 within 24 hours, offering specific times for calls. You never followed through with a single one. Would you like to explain that to the court? Victor's attorney objected, claiming harassment, but Judge Henderson overruled it and told Victor to answer. I may have missed some of her responses, Victor said, his confidence starting to crack. May have missed. Mr. Hale, your petition claims you're a dedicated father being kept from your child. Yet the evidence shows you've made minimal effort to maintain contact. In fact, Patricia pulled out another document. According to court records, you haven't paid child support in 18 months. Is that correct? I've had some financial difficulties. You drive a Mercedes S-Class. You own a home valued at $1.2 million. You took 3 international vacations in the past year, all documented on your social media accounts. Patricia's voice cut like a scalpel. Those don't sound like the financial difficulties of a man who can't afford $300 a month in child support. The questioning went on, Patricia systematically dismantling every claim Victor's attorneys had made. She presented the visitation calendar showing missed dates, the financial records showing unpaid support, the emails demonstrating Elena's repeated attempts to facilitate a relationship between Mia and her father. Then she called Nathan to the stand. Nathan's heart pounded as he swore to tell the truth, very aware of Victor's eyes boring into him from across the courtroom. Patricia approached, her expression kind. Mr. Cole, can you describe your relationship to Miss Moore and her daughter? I'm their neighbor. I moved in next door about 4 months ago. We became friends. And in those 4 months, have you observed the relationship between Miss Moore and Mia? Yes. Elena is an incredible mother. She's patient, loving, present. Mia is happy, well-adjusted, thriving. What about Mr. Hale? Have you observed his interactions with his daughter? Nathan took a breath. I witnessed one interaction. Mr. Hale came to Elena's home unannounced on May 23rd. He entered without permission and demanded to see Mia. When she appeared, she was visibly frightened and didn't want to go near him. Victor's attorney objected, but Nathan continued at Patricia's prompting, describing the entire encounter in detail. The intimidation, the way Victor had spoken to Elena, the fear in Mia's eyes. Mr. Hale called my client names in front of the child. Is that correct? Yes. He was verbally abusive and threatening. What happened next? I asked him to leave. He refused initially, made some threats about lawyers and custody battles, then eventually left when I made it clear I wasn't backing down. Victor's attorney stood for cross-examination, trying to paint Nathan as an interloper with an agenda, but Nathan stayed calm and factual. Yes, he cared about Elena. Yes, he'd become close with Mia. No, he wasn't trying to replace her father. He was just a neighbor who'd become a friend and witnessed behavior that concerned him. The judge asked her own questions, probing gently about Nathan's involvement, his intentions, his observations of Mia's well-being. Nathan answered honestly, feeling the weight of his words, knowing they could tip the balance either way. Finally, Judge Henderson called a recess to review the evidence. Nathan returned to sit beside Elena, who was shaking so hard her teeth chattered. You did good, he whispered. I can't tell. I can't read her. That's the point. She's being fair. They sat in terrible silence for 45 minutes while Judge Henderson reviewed files and made notes. Victor sat on his side of the courtroom, looking less confident now, his attorneys huddled in quiet conversation. When they were called back in, Judge Henderson's expression was grave. I've reviewed all the evidence presented today, and I've considered the testimony of both parties. This court's primary concern is always the best interest of the child, not the parents, not their feelings or their egos. The child. Nathan felt Elena grip his hand so hard it hurt. Mr. Hale, your petition for joint custody is denied. The existing custody arrangement will remain in place with modifications. Judge Henderson's voice was firm. You will have supervised visitation every other Saturday for 2 hours at a neutral location. A court-appointed supervisor will be present for all visits. This arrangement will be reviewed in 6 months, at which time the court will determine if unsupervised visitation is appropriate based on consistent attendance and the child's comfort level. Victor's face went red. Your Honor, that's completely... Furthermore, Judge Henderson continued, you are ordered to pay all back child support immediately, plus a penalty for non-payment. Going forward, support payments will be automatically deducted from your paycheck to ensure compliance. Failure to attend scheduled visitations or make payments will result in termination of visitation rights entirely. This is outrageous, Victor stood, his attorneys trying to pull him back down. You're letting her keep my daughter from me because she's sleeping with some nobody. Mr. Hale, Judge Henderson's voice cracked like a whip. One more outburst and I'll hold you in contempt. Sit down. Victor sat, but his fury radiated across the courtroom like heat. Ms. Moore, Judge Henderson said, her tone softening slightly, you have done everything right in this case. You have documented your attempts at co-parenting. You have maintained a stable, loving home for your daughter. The court finds no evidence of parental alienation or inappropriate behavior on your part. She paused. As for Mr. Cole's involvement, I see a concerned neighbor who responded appropriately to a situation that required intervention. Nothing in his testimony or actions suggests anything contrary to the child's best interests. Elena's breath came out in a sob of relief. However, Judge Henderson continued, I would advise both of you to maintain clear boundaries moving forward. If your relationship with Mr. Cole develops into something more significant, I expect appropriate introductions and transitions for Mia's sake. Children need stability above all else. Yes, Your Honor, Elena managed. This hearing is adjourned. Mr. Hale, your first supervised visitation will be scheduled through the court within 2 weeks. I expect you to attend. The gavel came down with a crack of finality, and it was over. Victor stormed out without a word, his attorneys following, their expensive suits unable to hide the defeat they'd just suffered. Nathan watched them go and felt nothing but relief that Mia would be protected from a man who saw her as a possession rather than a person. Elena collapsed into her chair, her hands over her face, her whole body shaking with the release of months of tension. Patricia squeezed her shoulder. You did it, the lawyer said quietly. You protected your daughter. We did it, Elena corrected, looking up at Nathan with eyes full of tears and gratitude and something else, something that looked a lot like love. We did it together. Outside the courthouse, in the bright summer sun that seemed almost offensive in its cheerfulness after the tension of the hearing, Elena threw her arms around Nathan and held on like he was the only solid thing in a world that had been shaking for months. Thank you, she whispered against his chest, for everything, for staying, for testifying, for being exactly what you promised you'd be. Nathan wrapped his arms around her, breathing in the scent of her shampoo and feeling the steady beat of her heart against his. I told you I wasn't going anywhere. I know. I finally believe you. They stood there for a long moment, oblivious to the people streaming past them on the courthouse steps, just holding each other and letting the reality of victory settle into their bones. What happens now? Elena asked finally, pulling back to look at him. Nathan brushed a strand of hair from her face, his hand lingering on her cheek. Now we go get Mia and tell her she's safe. Then we figure out what comes next. Together. Together, Elena repeated, and the word sounded like a promise. They drove back to the beach town in comfortable silence, hands linked across the center console, watching the landscape change from city to coast. When they pulled into the driveway, Mia came running from the neighbor's house, her face anxious. Mama, is it over? What happened? Elena scooped her up, and Nathan saw the exact moment Mia understood from her mother's expression that everything was going to be okay. The little girl's face transformed from worry to pure joy. The scary man can't take you, Elena said, her voice thick with emotion. You're staying with me. Always. And Mr. Nathan too? Mia asked, looking over her mother's shoulder at him with those enormous eyes. Elena turned to look at Nathan, a question in her expression. He stepped forward and ruffled Mia's hair gently. Yeah, kiddo, me too, if that's okay with you. It's more than okay, Mia declared. It's perfect. That evening, after Mia had been put to bed with extra stories and reassurances, Nathan and Elena sat on her back deck watching the sun set over the ocean. The sky was painted in oranges and pinks and purples, so beautiful it almost hurt to look at. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, Elena admitted quietly. For something to go wrong. For Victor to appeal or for you to decide this is all too much. The appeal deadline is 30 days, but Patricia says he won't do it. He's lost too much already, and he knows it. As for me deciding it's too much, Nathan turned to face her fully. Elena, I lost my wife 6 months ago. I know what too much feels like. This isn't it. What is it then? Nathan considered the question carefully, wanting to get this right. It's the first thing that's felt right since Sarah died. It's messy and complicated and scary, but it's real. You're real. Mia's real. And for the first time since I lost Sarah, I can see a future that doesn't just look like surviving day to day. I can see actually living again. Elena's eyes filled with tears. So scared of messing this up. Then we'll mess it up together and figure it out as we go. Nathan took both her hands in his. I'm not asking for perfect, Elena. I'm just asking for honest. For us to try. To see what this could be if we're both brave enough to let it happen. I don't know if I'm brave enough. You left an abusive relationship with a toddler and no money. You built a whole life for yourself and your daughter. You stood up to Victor in court and won. Nathan smiled. You're the bravest person I know. This is just a different kind of scary. Elena laughed through her tears. You have an answer for everything, don't you? Not everything, but I'm pretty good at the important stuff. She leaned forward and kissed him, slow and sweet and deliberate. Not the desperate kiss of fear like before, but something certain. A choice made with full knowledge of the risks and the rewards. When they pulled apart, both slightly breathless, Elena rested her forehead against his. Okay, let's try. Let's see what happens when two broken people decide to build something together. We're not broken, Nathan corrected gently. We're just people who've been through hard things and came out the other side. There's a difference. Yeah, Elena said softly. I guess there is. They sat together as the sun finished its descent and the stars began to appear, talking about small things and big things and all the things in between. Nathan told her about Lily's upcoming visit in 2 weeks, how nervous he was about his daughter meeting Elena and Mia. Elena confessed that she was nervous too, wanting to make a good impression on the little girl who meant everything to Nathan. "She's gonna love you," Nathan said with certainty. "How could she not? I'm her dead mother's replacement. That's a lot for a kid to handle." "You're not a replacement. Sarah can't be replaced, but you're someone new. Someone who makes her dad smile again. Lily wants that for me, even if it's scary for her too." Nathan squeezed Elena's hand. "We'll take it slow. Let them get to know each other. No pressure." "Okay, slow sounds good." The weeks that followed were a study in building something real from tentative beginnings. Nathan and Elena went on actual dates. Dinner at the small Italian place on Main Street, a movie in the next town over, a long walk on the beach after Mia was asleep. They talked about Sarah and Victor, about grief and healing, and the particular challenge of opening your heart when you'd learned how badly it could break. Nathan introduced Elena to his sister-in-law during a video call, and Marie was warm and welcoming in a way that made Nathan's throat tight with gratitude. She asked Elena about her work, about Mia, about her life in the beach town, and never once made her feel like she was being judged against Sarah's memory. Victor attended his first supervised visitation and lasted exactly 45 minutes before getting frustrated with Mia's wariness and leaving early. The second visit, he didn't show up at all. By the third missed visit, Patricia filed to have his rights terminated entirely, and Victor's attorney didn't even fight it. He was done playing father now that the game had stopped being about winning and started being about actual parenting. When the termination was finalized, Elena cried, not from sadness, but from the sheer relief of knowing Mia was finally, legally, permanently safe. Lily's visit came in mid-August, and Nathan was a wreck of nerves picking her up from the airport. His daughter had grown in the 2 months since he'd seen her, seemed older somehow, more aware. She hugged him fiercely, and Nathan held her like he'd never let go. "I missed you, Dad," she whispered into his shoulder. "Missed you too, Lil. More than all the stars." In the car ride back to the beach house, Lily peppered him with questions about Elena and Mia. What were they like? Would she like them? Were they nice? Nathan answered honestly, explaining that Elena was someone special to him, that Mia was a sweet kid Lily's age, that he hoped they could all be friends, but there was no pressure. "Mom wanted you to be happy," Lily said quietly, staring out the window. "She told me that. But it's still weird, Dad. Thinking of you with someone else." Nathan's heart clenched. "I know, sweetheart. It's weird for me too. But weird doesn't mean wrong. Does that make sense?" "I think so." Lily turned to look at him, her expression so much like Sarah's it hurt. "Do you love her?" The question caught Nathan off guard. He thought about lying, about downplaying it, about protecting Lily from complications she didn't need to carry. But Sarah had taught him the value of honesty, especially with their daughter. "I think I'm starting to," he admitted. "It's different from how I loved your mom. Not better or worse, just different. Your mom will always be special, Lil. Always. Elena doesn't change that." Lily considered this seriously. "Okay, I want to meet her." The introduction happened that afternoon on the beach. Elena and Mia were waiting, both nervous, and Nathan made the introductions with his heart in his throat. For a few awkward minutes, the girls just stared at each other, sizing each other up the way kids do. Then Mia, bless her fearless heart, held up a beach ball. "Want to play?" Lily glanced at her father, and Nathan nodded encouragingly. "Go ahead." The girls ran off toward the water, and Nathan and Elena were left standing side by side, watching them play. "That wasn't as awful as I expected," Elena said. "The day's still young. But it turned out to be fine. Better than fine." The girls were cautious with each other at first, but by the end of the afternoon they were building sandcastles together and chattering like old friends. Lily asked Mia about her purple bookshelf, and Mia proudly showed it off, explaining that she and Mr. Nathan had painted it together. "Can we paint something together?" Lily asked her father that evening after dinner. "Absolutely. What do you want to paint?" "I don't know yet, but I like that you do that with Mia. Makes me feel like I'm not missing out on stuff when I'm with Aunt Marie. Nathan pulled his daughter close, overwhelmed by her generosity, her ability to share him even when it had to be hard. "You're amazing, you know that?" "I learned it from Mom," Lily said simply. The 2 weeks of Lily's visit flew by in a blur of beach days and painting projects and family dinners that included all four of them. Nathan watched his daughter and Mia become genuine friends, watched Elena be patient and kind with Lily, watched his two worlds merge in ways that felt natural instead of forced. On Lily's last night, they all went down to the beach to watch the sunset. The girls ran ahead, chasing waves, while Nathan and Elena walked hand in hand behind them. "This is nice," Elena said quietly. "All of us together." "Yeah, it is. Do you think we can make this work? Long-distance co-parenting, blended families, all of it?" Nathan thought about that question, about all the logistics and complications it represented, about the fact that Lily lived in Pittsburgh most of the year and Mia was here, about custody schedules and school breaks, and the thousand small details that would need coordination. "I think if we want it badly enough, we'll figure it out," he said finally. "It won't be easy, but good things rarely are." Elena leaned her head on his shoulder, watching the sun paint the sky in impossible colors. "I love you, Nathan Cole. I don't know when it happened exactly, but somewhere between the purple bookshelf and the custody hearing and you refusing to give up on me even when I pushed you away, I fell in love with you." Nathan's breath caught. He turned to face her fully, the sunset forgotten, his whole world contained in this one moment. "I love you too. You and Mia both. You've given me something I thought I'd lost forever, a reason to believe in tomorrow, instead of just surviving today." They kissed as the sun slipped below the horizon, and somewhere down the beach their daughters cheered, making exaggerated gagging sounds that dissolved into giggles. "Our kids are ridiculous," Elena said, laughing. "Yeah, but they're ours." 3 months later, when the leaves were turning and the beach town was emptying of tourists, Nathan stood on Elena's back deck, newly reinforced and weatherproofed, and watched Elena emerge from the house in that red bikini. The one she'd been wearing the first morning he'd seen her, when she'd been standing at the ocean's edge like she was challenging the world to notice her. She walked toward him with confidence instead of defiance, and when she caught him watching, she smiled instead of challenging. "Still staring?" she asked, but there was no edge to it now. "Always," Nathan admitted, "but not the way you think. How then? Like you're the best view I've ever seen. Better than the ocean, better than anything." Elena wrapped her arms around his neck, standing on her toes to kiss him properly. "We've come a long way from that first morning." "Yeah, we have." Nathan held her close, breathing in the scent of sunscreen and salt air, and the particular fragrance that was just Elena. "You scared the hell out of me that day." "Good. You needed scaring. What I needed was someone brave enough to let me prove I could stay." Elena pulled back to look at him, her dark eyes serious. "You did more than stay, Nathan. You built a home with us, a family. You chose us every single day, even when it was hard." "It was never hard," Nathan corrected. "Complicated, yes, scary sometimes, but not hard. Loving you is the easiest thing I've done since Sarah died." "I used to think I was too broken for this," Elena admitted. "Too damaged by Victor and my father and every man who taught me that love was conditional. But you taught me something different." "What's that?" "That love isn't about being whole, it's about being honest, about showing up broken and scared and still choosing to try." She smiled, and it lit up her whole face. "You chose to stay when I gave you every reason to run. That changed everything." Nathan kissed her again, slow and deep and certain, and when they finally pulled apart, Mia was in the doorway watching them with obvious delight. "Are you guys being gross again?" she asked, but she was grinning. "Extremely gross," Elena confirmed. "Go get your sandcastle stuff. Mr. Nathan promised he'd help us build the biggest one yet." Mia cheered and disappeared to gather supplies, her enthusiasm infectious. Elena took Nathan's hand and they walked down to the beach where they'd first met all those months ago. The ocean rolled in with its eternal patience, indifferent to human drama and triumph both. But Nathan had learned something in his time here. The ocean's indifference didn't make it meaningless. It just meant that meaning was something you built yourself, one choice at a time, one day at a time. He'd come to this beach town a widower drowning in grief, believing the best parts of his life were behind him. He'd found a woman standing in a red bikini, testing the world with her presence, and seen past the armor to the person underneath. Together, they'd built something real from broken pieces. A family that didn't erase what they'd lost, but honored it by choosing to live fully again. Nathan hadn't replaced Sarah. He'd learned to carry her memory while making room for new love. Elena hadn't erased her scars. She'd learned to trust despite them. And two little girls who might have been lost in the wreckage of their parents' pain had instead found friendship and safety and the kind of home where people stayed even when things got hard. That evening, as the sun set over the ocean and they all worked together on the world's most ambitious sandcastle, Nathan felt something settle in his chest. Not the absence of grief that would always be part of him, but something new, something that felt like peace. Lily was coming back for Thanksgiving. They'd have Christmas together. Summer would bring long weeks of both girls running wild on the beach. There would be challenges ahead, logistics and exes and the ordinary complications of blending families. But they'd face them together. Elena caught his eye across the sandcastle and mouthed, "I love you." Nathan smiled and mouthed it back, then turned to help Mia construct a tower that was definitely going to collapse, but would be beautiful while it lasted. And wasn't that the truth of everything? Beautiful while it lasted. Worth building even if it was temporary. Worth loving even if it hurt. The ocean kept rolling. The stars started appearing. And Nathan Cole, single father and widower, and man who'd learned the hard way how to stay, looked at the family he'd chosen and the family that had chosen him back, and knew with absolute certainty that he'd finally found his way home. Not the home he'd expected, not the one he'd planned, but the one he needed, built from red bikinis and purple bookshelves and the simple promise to show up day after day, even when it was scary, especially when it was scary. Because that's what fathers did. That's what love did. It stayed.